I was born in 1998, and that is the year that Windows 98 came out. And my grandfather at that time did have a computer. So I had been using Windows literally, okay, not using, but I have been seeing Windows literally since the year I was born, right? And so it was Windows 98, and we used that for many, many years. And I remember growing up to, I think I was 3 years old, or 4 years old, or 5 years old, and I did play around with Microsoft Paint, or like there was like a ping pong game in Windows 98. It was a cards game. So I've been using Windows for the past 23, 24 years until this day, right? So I finally got my first Macintosh computer, which has been the parallel universe for personal computing. And it has sort of blown my mind. This is a completely different experience from Windows in terms of hardware, in terms of software, in terms of simply how you interact with the device. So this is just going to be a short video of my experience as a lifetime Windows user switching from Windows to Macintosh. So as I said, I've used everything from Windows 98 to XP to Windows 7. Then I switched from Windows 7 directly to Windows 10, then Windows 11, and now to Mac OS. Right, this is the latest version of Mac OS, and this is the MacBook Air with M1 chip and 16 gigs of RAM. Actually, I was going to go for the new MacBook Pro 14 inches, but the crypto market crashed. So did my portfolio, so did my budget. But this is really good. This is really, really good. This is already way more powerful than my Windows laptop, which is also over here. Uh, so let's start with initial impressions, right? So this device is absolutely stunning. It's simply stunning, right? It's really thin. It's really thin. Like, look at this thing, right? I thought my Windows laptop was thin, but comparatively, the MacBook Air is simply like a third of the thickness. Look at this. This is the Windows and this is the Macintosh. Just look at this. So this is really thin, really light. Uh, but apart from that, just the build of it, like if you buy a Windows computer, then it doesn't matter whether you buy a cheap one or an expensive one. Even if I buy a Windows laptop, which is much more expensive than a MacBook Air, then you do get a chunky feeling. You do sort of have an idea that this laptop or this computer is made up of different parts that have been brought together and are sort of binded by screws or by glue. But you don't feel that on an Apple device. It simply feels like it's just carved out of one piece of metal. So from an aesthetic point of view, this is definitely like a completely different game, right? So and let me just open this up, and it opens instantly, right? So and yeah, so I think a lot of my experience being so positive with the Macintosh is also because this is the M1 chip, so it's really, really fast. So apart from the just the outer build quality, I would also like to talk about the screen. It's a 1600p display, which is almost 2K, so twice that of Full HD. 4K is four times Full HD. This is at least 2.5K, right? So although it's a smaller screen than a 14-inch Windows laptop, there is so much more that you can see on the screen, because the text, even the smaller texts, are much more clear. The keyboard is fantastic. The touchpad, I had heard a lot about it. I finally used it. It is also absolutely fantastic. Now, usually I do not praise products like this, I am very critical of things. For example, the 4K monitor that I just got, it has actually been quite disappointing. We might do a separate video for that. Uh, but the touchpad here is really good. Obviously, there's no latency here, but simply the way you do multitasking on a Mac is just so different from the way you do it on Windows, right? So I can just swipe between different windows. It's just that simple. Look at this. I could not do this on a Windows. You go up, you go down, you just swipe. It's really good. Uh, and the let's talk about speed, right? So I can open as many apps as I want to, as many programs as I want to, and it simply does not slow down. And this doesn't even have a fan for to cool the processor, right? And even if I open all sorts of apps, so there's and then I go to task manager. So in Windows we have task managers. Here we have activity monitor, and most of the time, not more than 5 or 6% of the CPU is being used, even when everything is open. That's pretty fantastic. I do have some issues because obviously I have been using Windows since ever basically. So I find it easier in the sense that I know how to copy paste, how to basically take files from one window to other window. And I think that the way you do it in Mac is sort of different, like really different. So there is a learning curve to it, right? It's not as simple as an iPhone or an iPad. So Mac OS is not as simple as iOS or iPad OS, right? So there is a learning curve to this. There are some complications, but even after all of that, the experience is completely worth the money. The way the hardware and the software is coming together, I think it's totally worth the money. It's bloody expensive. I got this for 1.1 lakhs, 1,10,000. This is 16 gigs model, 16 gigs of RAM. But I'm really happy with this purchase, and yeah, that's pretty much it.